Okay, we're gonna jump right in and to introduce you, Clara, to the ones of us that don't know you yet, I'm gonna refer to what others actually have said about you. 50 Next announced a list of young people doing future-defining work in the world of food and drink. And they wrote that for you, cheese is about much more than curdled milk. It's a lifestyle, a culture, and a way to create new industry standards that make the planet better. Vogue stated, you want us to care about the future of cheese. You've been in cheese since you were 21, and last year in 2020, you founded, again, excuse my Spanish, for Formaje.
Exactly.
Thank you, Clara. I practiced a lot. A cheese shop and a platform in Madrid in which you dedicate yourself to promote and spread artisan cheese and taste culture. To get to know you a little better, I want to use the term terroir that I really like. Terroir is very much settled in wine culture, but also in cheese. We have started talking about it. You seem like a person with a strong expression of terroir. What are the natural factors and the cultural influences that give you and your work their character? So to speak, what is Claras Terroir?
I mean, well, thank you for the beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. Terroir to me is a sense of being part of something, right? Of being connected with the environment where you usually, where you are, basically, and that in some way builds your personality and your way of being, basically, right? So I guess that, to me, terroir is vinculated with the idea of feeling connected with who you are and where you are. And it makes a lot of sense to me that cheese, that we include this word when talking about cheese, basically because just as wine, for example, that you mentioned, cheese is highly vinculated to the characteristics of the environment where it's made. So cheese is, at the end of the day, a representation of the particularities of the environments where it comes from, right? So I'm not sure we can talk, or we actually can talk, but I don't think that it is as interesting. I don't think that we can actually talk about cheese without talking about terroir, about the place where it has actually been developed as a product, right? Because it's like there's a line that connects it with all the culture and the peculiarities of the environment where actually it comes from. So to me, it's a bit of the same thing, right? And cannot be disconnected, or it can be disconnected, but it's not the kind of cheese that it actually interests me.
Mm-hmm. And what is your environment that you grew up in that connected you to cheese?
Yeah, so
and like fostered your interest?
It happened actually by chance. I am very in a way that wasn't expected, for sure. I studied media communication, nothing to do with food, and I was living in London for a while, but working, studying, doing different things, nothing related to food, definitely nothing related to cheese. And when I came back to Spain, I was spending some months at my parents' home and then house, and then living with them, living with my family. And it was a family friend who was a cheesemaker that basically proposed me to be part of a project he was in that moment trying to develop. he wanted to create some, cheese platform in Madrid, from where to actually being able to sell not just his cheeses, but cheeses from cheesemakers from all over the country, artisan cheesemakers. So he basically was needing someone who would move to Madrid and put this project and start working on this project. That started as a shop basically, and then became something bigger, but at the beginning it was a shop. So he was basically needing someone, and he asked my parents, like, to any of your kids, because I come from a very big family, we are 7 siblings, then I'm the oldest one. So he basically asked my parents if some of your kids actually would be interested in joining me for this. And I was just, back from London, kind of trying to figure out what was next for me. And I just found it really interesting. So I started getting trained. I started, spending a lot of time with this cheesemaker and with cheesemakers from all over the country, making cheese with them, understanding what is actually behind the product, what an artisan product means actually, and well, all the philosophy that actually is behind this kind of productions, right? And I just fell in love with it, especially with the idea of bacteriology transforming food. Basically, I really connected with the idea of fermented food. It was mind-blowing to me that I had, I have never heard about fermented products back then, and to me it changes something inside, and I just found it so interesting and so I don't know, full of possibilities, and that's how I actually got, how I connected with cheese in a very random way, actually. Yeah. So, and then my family, if you were asking me, sorry, about terroir, my family, I grew up in the countryside as well, and my family has a big connection with nature, I guess. My father has always been in touch with plants, we have that kind of appreciation for natural environments. Then one of my brothers has goats, so he also transforms milk, and we are kind of rooted to these ways of living that are like very vinculated and linked to fields, I guess.
Okay, you have, and maybe also with a winking eye, called yourself a cheese activist. I feel like the work of a cheesemonger is somewhat comparable to both the work as an activist, in the sense of dedicating your energy to a higher goal, in your case safeguarding traditional artisan cheeses, and maybe something like a gallery owner, where you're mediating between artists and collectors, which in our cases are the cheese producers and consumers. Do you see any tensions or also potentials between economic interests and truly espousing artisan cheese tradition?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think, as you said as well, that I guess that, most of the people that actually dedicates his professional life to foster the appreciation of a product or of a sector in need of it is some kind of, of activist in some way, right? And I feel that, any cheesemonger, actually, any person who has decided to work, putting in touch these two parts of the same reality, that are, the what is behind the product and the value of the product, and then the consumer, that is at the end the one that has the capacity to actually decide and support a kind of production and a kind of consumption, and make sure the viability of this. to put in touch these two parts, I guess that is an act of activism in some way, right? So it's not just me, I guess, it's everybody that is actually involved in this fight for actually giving value to what is behind a product that is not by far as well known and as valued in society as it could be, I guess. So this is, first of all, this is like my idea about what being an activist in this field could actually mean. And then you were asking about economic tensions, right? You said, which I understand the question as the difficulties, right, that might be related to this. And is that right?
It can be. I mean, it can be whatever you read out of it, but it could be about what are the fair shares along the cheese chain, basically, starting from the agricultural part to the milking, to the cheese making, and then to retail. Like how that could be one idea that I had connected with it. I mean, running a shop, you have an economic interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that, I mean, for us, the difficulties that we actually find sometimes in general terms is that and what is at the end in the center of our concerns is actually being able to, exactly as you said, connect properly these two parts, right? Because sometimes we are in the city, we are in Madrid, we are in town, and we have actually found that using new ways of communicating around cheese helps us to actually get new markets and get and basically take our introduce our discourse in new areas and new platforms, right? But at the end, the center of our concern is always being able to communicate everything that actually matters that is behind the cheese production, right? And this for sure starts with the raw material, which is the milk, and then with every, the dichotomies that are behind the cheese production, right? The problems that cheesemakers have, basically the valorization of product, right? So for us, it is fine to look for new ways of actually communicate, but always that the center of the problem is well taken care of, right? So the center of the discussion should always be, for me, it has always to be like, how can we actually make people understand what's the value and what are the benefits of choosing the consumption of artisan cheese, versus another industrial cheese that it is not a social asset, as I think that artisan cheese is itself, right? So, and also for sure from an economic perspective, it's not easy, because I guess that is a product that is not we haven't done enough work yet in order to give artisan cheese the position that it needs in society to be actually consumed and supported as it would need in order to actually give viability in the long term to artisan productions, right? So that's why I guess I feel that the work that we as connectors do is very important, not just us. I mean, everybody that actually is involved in different parts of the chain around the industry of artisan cheese, because we need a lot of actors, a lot of players yet putting value in different parts of the chain, right? And what is difficult to me, for example, one of the things is that at the end we yet need to deal with prices, for example, cheese, the kind of cheese we work with, for me, is a kind of luxury in a good way. Meaning, and I think we shouldn't be afraid of saying actually this, that is a luxury because it's produced in a way that involves some kind of ways of treating the raw material in a particular way, in particular amounts, having into consideration different aspects of creation of value, such as the needs of the environment, the needs of the animals, the needs that the fields have in order to actually, it just involves a lot of different aspects that at the end of the day need to be paid and need to be part of the product actually presentation, right? So sometimes that it's also to me, it's a discussion that we should have also about prices, right? How can we actually take the product to as many people as possible, but at the same time, we make sure that the prices people is paying for this product assure the viability of the products, of the projects that are actually being able, allowing us, to actually consume and have these kind of products, right?
Yeah. I really like what you said about basically being at the center point, fostering relationships in both directions, and therefore like ensuring a bigger market, of course, for a cheesemaker, but also doing the communication work to create value in society for these artisan cheeses. And that actually brings me to the next question, because we both dropped the word artisan, and I feel like it's a word that is very ubiquitous. It's maybe overused and in some parts has been taken away its intrinsic meaning. And in general, the dairy industry is faced with environmental, social, ethical, and also economic issues. But with Formaje, you're setting new standards, giving new meaning to artisan food. So would you like to elaborate on what artisan cheese is to you and what your guidelines are in curating your shop?
Yes, this is very interesting. So, actually, when we started working with thinking about Formaje and about the reasons why we actually wanted to develop this new project, is that after working with cheese for the last few years, we realized that in some way the word artisan needed to be deconstructed, or that's how we felt about it, in order to have a better understanding of what we are standing for when we are talking about crafts, about artisan productions, right? We realized that the term should be in some way rethought or revised, because in some way it was becoming empty, right? As you said, it's being used definitely for, in ways that are not always correct, right? And that at the end create a lot of confusion for in the customer, I would say, and in society in general, right? Even for us, sometimes it's difficult to have this conversation because it's not easy to actually understand what an artisan product is actually, right? So, for example, in my perspective, and this is like very, very personal, I think that an artisan product, there's two things that I consider that should be involved. One of them is manual processes, like the human hand involved in the parts of the process where actually it creates value, right? It doesn't mean that we do everything by hand, because that's not the way actually. Although, I mean, if everything is, like this is important, that I guess that manual processes, the human hand should be actually involved just where actually it creates value. It doesn't mean that the artisan makes everything by hand, no using machines, because that could be actually not very productive, right? But where actually it creates value, it makes sense that it's there, because that's gonna make a big difference, right? So that's one of the points that to me makes an artisan product actually. And then another thing, and that's why I guess that terroir is always very linked to artisan cheese when we talk about it, is the fact that we are transforming the raw material that is available in our environments, right? So to me, that's also about what artisan means, right? It's about being able to transform what we have around with the tools that we have. So that's how we actually connect our products to the territory and to the land and to the peculiarities of the place where we are actually elaborating that product. And that's artisan. I guess that at the end, right, is something that is made by hand because there's a creation of value using the raw material that we have in our environments. Those two things to me are quite clarifying when in terms of understanding the basis of an artisan product. And that's for sure very personal because it's my perspective. And I have been thinking about this, and this is, you know, what comes to my mind at the end of the day. And then after that, with Formaje, in focusing on standards for cheese, what we did is the first thing we actually did when we were thinking about Formaje as a project and as a platform was to write down a manifesto actually that would basically put together all the values, all the points that we think that should be taken into consideration when actually making our selection, right? And it talks about natural cheeses, understanding natural as what is actually what actually belongs or what is characteristic of something itself. In the case of cheese, is based on the idea of not adding additives or any compounds that is not strictly necessary for the definition of cheese, which is basically milk, ferment, or acid bacteria, rennet, and salt, sometimes not even these four. Then we want to work with a sustainable or friendly farming, understanding that you know that the result that is basically milk is basically, you know, that the farming practices should be actually always focused on ensuring the animal well-being, and that, you know, it's not that is actually being, you know, eating the native flora, and that basically the management, the livestock management prioritize you know, respect for natural cycles, etc. Then the use of raw milk, because I basically guess that that's a commitment to biodiversity, and, you know, is basically the way we have to actually put everything that is particular from our lands into the final product. And then for sure, and I guess to finish with, standards of flavor, because at the end of the day, and this is very important to me, we are talking about food. So if the product is not excellent in terms of flavors, if it doesn't have a gastronomic value, I'm not very sure that it makes sense to talk about all the things we talked before, right? So all these parameters have to have, I think that they have to have as the final point, to have a product that is excellent and that has that capacity to actually move people, right? Because these standards should take us to have a product that is basically unique.
It's like such an essential point. No, it has to be. I sometimes catch myself with customers talking about the history and the peculiarities of the cheese, and then I forget to like give it to them to taste because it's delicious. I mean, in the end, that's a crucial part about it. Could you, just one more question relating to what you just said, elaborate a bit further on what it means when you say the producers have to use what's in their environment? Is that regarding milk? Like, is the milk, does it have to be from the farm, or can it be like? Or did I even understand that right?
I get in the case of cheese, I would say that is definitely using milk that comes from the near environment. Yes, I would say so. I would say so. Like using the raw material that that is part that actually comes from the near environment. I would say that in the case of cheese, that's an important part when talking about artisan productions, definitely. Because it ensures traceability, basically.
Yeah.
And ensures that we are, you know, that we are that we have acknowledgement about the qualities of that milk in particular.
And is that for you also connected to regional traditions that have to be rooted in the cheese culture?
To me, for me, that's for sure as well. Like it makes all the sense, because I guess that in some way that's our main dati, I would say our main aim should be actually being able to make sure that these traditions and these particular ways of doing things, depending on where we are, survive over time, right? So to me, definitely tradition is a very important part of the conversation. Is something that it also can be interpreted in different ways. For example, there's a lot of new cheesemakers making recipes that doesn't belong to their territories, right? Like in Spain, that's happening a lot, and it's obviously great because I guess that it in some way enriches the conversation, making recipes that are, I don't know, like French recipes, for example, or well, in America, it happens all the time as well, right? Like they are bringing recipes from different parts of the world, etc., which to me makes everything like more interesting. But and of course, it's also part of how we create culture around the product, right? But what is more important to me is making sure that in some way we preserve the ways of being that came before us, because that's in some way, that's what we actually, that's in some way our compromise. That does make sense. And also because otherwise, I mean, I guess that one of the most interesting perspectives we can actually take from cheese is the cultural part of it, right? So we can talk about flavor for sure. We can talk about technique. We can talk about it as a social asset. But I guess that the most important part is that it is a cultural representation, right? It is vinculated to how people has actually interpreted the raw material in different ways, sometimes without the acknowledgement even, right? Like before us, nobody studied cheese, right? They just made it, and the results at some point become like a part of a culture, a particular culture, right? So like preserving this is the most precious treasure that we have, and is one of our, I guess that's one of our big responsibilities as people that is playing a part on this small world that is the artisan cheese world.
Yeah, I think that's about tradition, that is like, it's so precious, but you also, I think it's nice to leave this room to not conserve it the way that it is and not allow any sort of progress. So that's what I really like about what you said, that we need to respect it. But if I understood it right, there also always has to be like some movement forward, some people rethinking those traditions and maybe finding like little variables in it and adapting it to their personal realities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just feel that that's how, I mean, we can I think there's different ways of adding value to a culture in particular, right? And there are, as I said before, there are different dimensions, right? And so you don't need to feel all the dimensions, I guess. You can actually bring value to the conversation, maybe from a perspective that has nothing to do with, tradition, but from a technical perspective, right? And that's also very valuable and valid, because we belong to an industry that is so small and that needs, honestly, a lot of new players, people that brings things to the conversation. And so I guess that, everything should be welcome, right? Always that always, if it's actually brought to add some kind of value, I think that it should always be welcome. And that's how also we become in some way judgmental in a good way, right? Like when we have things to talk about and to discuss, right? So yes, but I think that, having that in mind, the cultural part of it, the traditional part of cheese making, is definitely one of the biggest assets we need to work for preserving, I would say.
With my next question, and you just like started briefly talking about it, is about community, because we are die Gemeinschaft. This question is sort of inevitable. What do you think are the cheese community's strengths, and what leaves potential to still be worked on? What do you think? Why do we need to like support each other, and do we need a strengthened community?
So I think that, the good thing that the cheese community has is that it's actually quite a small one. So for the good and for the bad, it's still small, right? Which in some way is helpful, because I guess that we have the opportunity to talk with each other and to learn from each other straight away, right? It's small enough to almost know most of the people that is actually doing things inside. So that, I guess that is quite beneficial in a way. And then I guess that we need to support each other, because I am sure that we all share very similar concerns, and we can always learn from each other. Because, for example, I don't know, but I am in continuous touch with the final customer as anybody that has a shop, but also work with different but I'm sure that I don't know, but I for sure I can I need, for example, the people that is in direct touch with for example, with the raw material, because I'm not always making cheese, for sure, right? But I help a lot of actually having conversations with those who are working with the raw material, with the milk. And I guess that I can bring also some light to those making cheese through my perspective with the customer and with the markets. And that's how we can create, I guess, like links that actually help us creating something that is more solid, and that as a community can actually work, and as also as a that's basically what I feel about this. And then also that I guess that small communities such as the artisan cheese community, sometimes we tend to be in general quite endogamic, and that's something we really need to, I guess, try to avoid. Because and with endogamic I mean that we tend to have conversations between us without sometimes opening it enough to actually bring more people that wasn't necessarily connected to it before. That's why I guess these kind of conversations are really useful and helpful, because it's not very it's not very constructive. It is in some way, but it's not super helpful to talk, for example, about raw milk with people that already knows the benefits of raw milk, or talking about terroir with people that already knows all the implications of that word, right? We need to bring that conversation, we need to open it to actually new profiles, new people that might have never learned, listened about it, right? That's how we can actually take our message and make it stronger, and actually bring it to new territories, which I think that is really important for actually the survival of what we do, right?
Looking at the clock, I mean, I would have several other questions, but also towards the end, I want to open up the conversation to everyone else. So before I do that, first of all, thank you, Clara, for taking your time and talking with us. It was super interesting to get your insights.
Thank you. I'm so happy.
I see clapping hands. And then maybe whoever feels like it, you can either write your question in the chat or just put on your video and your audio, ask yourself.
Right, let me check chat, right?
Yeah, and otherwise I have plenty of other questions that I can drop.
Right. Okay.
There was a question by Manuela, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I can also talk them, because sorry, I can't put my video on as I'm in a bus at the moment. I'm so sorry, I had to run to the bus. I 100% underline what Clara said. It's absolutely true about that the product just is not just to be good enough. If it is produced good, it also has to taste amazing. That's what you get the customer with at the end, with the taste, and then you can tell the story. I'm saying this because I have a similar store in Berlin, actually exactly the same philosophy like you. We know our producers personally. We visited the farms. We also have a very, very big cheese counter, not as big as yours. I'm actually very jealous about it. And I'm running the store now for 8 years. And that's why I also know what are the challenges behind. And what would be interesting for me is, as I see it, your store must have cost a lot of money of investment, because you have to cool it down. You have to probably also make the humidity working, otherwise the cheese would be breaking. So my question is, did you have an investor, or you just paid it with all your own money? And how do you plan to be profitable? Because you opened last year when Corona was in the middle. So yes. I'm very curious about if you, how yes. do you make it to be profitable at the end?
We don't have investors.
Oh, wow.
We don't have an investor. It's just me and my husband, Adrian. We definitely went to the bank, to say like straight. But we are very lucky that the project has been profitable from day one, which I know is a big luck. We are also, I mean, we always thought of the project as a hybrid platform, something between the physical and the digital stores, right? So at the beginning, we just opened the physical store, the store we have in Madrid. And then some months later, in September of last year, we opened the digital platform. I guess that we are very well situated, located in the city, which helps. I guess that we found a neighborhood that has an appreciation for the product, but for sure that is not enough. That's why from minute one we have always, been communicating quite a lot, because we have found that communicating out of our own environment, out of, not just for the cheese industry, but for other industries, and that has helped pretty much, I guess, positioning like the company as something that talks about cheese, but that has a conversation that is actually valid for a lot of different fields. And so creating, you know, links with people that are not necessarily related to the product, to cheese, but that has, you know, a point of view or a perspective that can actually enrich our own world. That has always been one of our strategies. But I guess that, as I said before, you know, for sure, making a project that from that, you know, that is actually profitable from day one is definitely necessary, right? Otherwise, and then we have been very lucky that we have been able to make our platform grow. So we have more people working with us now, and the digital part has also helped pretty much. I don't know, like, I don't know if that actually helps giving you a response.
Yes, I'm amazed. I'm really amazed, because I really know how difficult it is, and how many people you need to run the store, to also do the marketing behind. So maybe just one question, because the time is running out and I want to give other people the chance. How is the share of your offline sales, so in-store versus the online sales? Do you like 50-50%, or is online much higher in importance than?
No, right now the shop is much higher. We are making a lot of efforts for the digital parts, because we really wanted to grow, and because it basically allows us to send cheese to, you know, all over the country, and also Portugal, which is great. But definitely now the shop supports most of the economic benefits, I would say. But maybe it's like, I would need actually to check, but I guess that the shop is like maybe like 60-70%, and then the digital platform is like 30% or so, something like that.
Thank you so much. I have loads of more questions, but I may just write them later on.
Anyone else who would? Carla?
Yeah, I actually have a question too. I was wondering, since you studied communications, if you have any like advice or things that you learned and that you would like to recommend to small producers who want to communicate about their product?
Yes, I think that you know, one of the things I feel is that sometimes the small product shouldn't be the one communicating its own their own products, you know, because sometimes, I mean, I guess what I get is that the small producer sometimes has enough making an excellent product, right? So I guess that, you know, myself, we do communicate all the time, but because we are a company that in some way is based in communicating about the product that we are actually trying to sell, right? But I guess that a producer needs to focus on productions. So if one of my thoughts about this would be, give someone that responsibility, but give it to someone, right? Give it to somebody that can actually take that can actually take that part of your business. Because for sure, what I mean is that without communication, it's very difficult that your project gets to be as known as probably it deserves, right? And then apart from that, if you actually as a producer want to communicate yourself, I would say keep it simple. Like, you know, I guess that in general, society is we have an enormous lack of real stories, right? People want to see what is behind in a very raw way. People, you know, we don't want more like, you know, beautiful things, I would say, in a way that you know, like in some way like makeup, right? Like in general, I guess, and that's why what is like very attractive from small productions is a way of living that a lot of people doesn't really know that exists nowadays, right? So you know, like there's a lot of people that haven't that hasn't seen a cow being milked ever, you know. So that's something we need to have in mind, that communicating sometimes as a producer is basically show what's your reality about, actually. And that makes it very, to me, very attractive, right? Because that's what people actually want to see nowadays. They want to see what is behind those worlds that they are not part of, right? So I don't know if it makes sense, but this could be one of my recommendations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And
Thank
then
you.
at the same time, making this exercise of being aware of what are your strengths, you know, as a producer, what is actually making you different, what do you have to offer, right? That could be good for the customer, for society in general, right? How are you actually making the world better? That's as a producer with your product, communicating that, but having it very clear, having like this manifesto, this you know, mission, vision in your minds. It doesn't matter if you're a producer or if you have a shop or whatever you are in any part of the chain you are at. I think that having this clear, like how are you actually bringing value, that's actually the first step, because that's how then you're going to be able to communicate it properly.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Do we have anyone else with something on their minds? Any sort of contribution, questions? Don't be shy.
This is always the worst part. Nobody wants to talk.
Maybe I mean, I would have another question, but of course I want everyone else to maybe take a step first. But okay, so another thing that I was thinking about is that the cheese world, and obviously not only the cheese world, is pretty much male dominated, at least what you see from the outside. And what do you think, what perspectives and what sort of qualities do you bring into the community, into the industry?
I guess, you know, as in any field, because the thing with women is that historically we haven't been able to show our perspectives pretty much, I would say. So now that we can actually do it more and more, I would say, you know, new sensibilities, new perceptions, new ways of understanding this particular field that is the artisan cheese field, right? I guess that we can basically bring new ingredients to the conversation that are definitely going to make it, you know, wider and more, you know, more you know, just wider and more interesting, right? Because I guess that, but you know, as I said, as in any field, right, like the conversation has usually been directed by, in this case, by men. So it's always interesting to see how actually we as women can find new perspectives, new ways of understanding this particular path. And yeah, I don't know, I have always felt that Formaje, for example, has a lot of that. We, you know, it's a female company, basically. I mean, most of us are women. Well, for sure, my husband and other men are also involved, but there's a lot of women, and I feel that there's a particular sensitivity, a particular way of actually doing things that is very related to the fact that we are women, and so we have understood that this sector can maybe has another attractions that were not part of the conversations before, because maybe men didn't conceive them as such, right? If this makes sense, actually. The opposite would have happened if women would actually led the conversation before, right? That with the enter of more men, probably it would have been, you know, much better and enriched and whatever, but it happens the other way. So I think that, you know, it is what it is for in any you know, kind of field, but I feel that definitely we can bring, you know, a lot to this conversation, definitely. And then all over the world, women have always made cheese, right? So it's not something that we don't know how to do. We have always sell things, you know, and sell definitely cheese all over, you know, society. So it's something, I mean, we have definitely been in the field forever, but maybe not guiding it in some ways. And I feel that that kind of guidance is something that we can actually definitely develop and do very in a great way, bringing new conversations and new stuff.
Yeah, I think you're really like creating a lot of visibility for that aspect. And another thing that makes me think of that is also connected, I think, to you personally and I mean, you've been like the whole aesthetics part, you've been featured in Vogue as probably the first cheesemonger ever, and your aesthetics of the shop are so strong. Like how do you think a certain kind of aesthetic can make people engage to cheese in a new way, or what is your aesthetic relationship to it?
So
how do you use the aesthetics? That's like 3 questions at the same time, so feel free to answer whatever part of it.
You know, to me, well, for me, the aesthetic part, it has always been a tool, you know, like a communicating tool. It's always been that. First of all, I feel that we naturally, as human, we feel more attracted to things that are beautiful. That's, you know, I guess that's what it is. And in some way, the beauty of things helps enhancing the real value of things, right? So to me, because I know and I have a big appreciation for the value of the product I work with, it would not make sense to actually place it in an ugly place. That's the first thing, right? So for sure, I wanted to have a shop that it would be as beautiful as possible and that would be as attractive as possible for most of the people, right? Because that's a very easy tool that is actually going to bring me more people that is going to get interested in my product. And that's the final point. I want people to ask me about the cheeses we work with. I want people to actually have interest for the story behind the cheeses we are working with. And no way these cheeses are going to be in an ugly place. Makes no sense because they have a lot of value. The shop needs to be amazing. To me, that's like period. But apparently not everybody is not that common, right? That perspective. I find it like, you know, that's how it has to be. It's a way also, it's a way of bringing a new conception around cheese because cheese hadn't been, you know, placed in a place like this before. So because of that, people is attracted to this idea, and that's a way we get to actually involve more people, right? Like how, to me, it was amazing that it was great to have, for example, architects, interiorists, you know, yeah, this kind of, you know, creative people involved in the conversation of creating a cheese shop, because then their paths, their, you know, everything that they can actually bring to the conversation is actually put into it, and the results is much richer than if I would have conceived the shop myself, I would say. And same thing with everything around cheese. I feel that we just work with a product that is so beautiful, but not aesthetically, but you know, from a cultural perspective, and that it has like a lot of different ways of actually being understood. And I feel that space, for example, should just, you know, let the customer focus on that. That's what we tried with the shop, creating a space that would enhance the inner value of cheese and would let people, you know, to understand that the value we are trying to actually, you know, create.
Fantastic. Thank you, Clara. I mean, I haven't been myself yet, but seeing it from pictures, I mean, I think you really did some pioneer work with that, really creating this new value and appreciation for such a beautiful product as cheese.
There's a word just to end up with that is activation territories. I think is a way of saying it that they apparently use in marketing. Someone told it to me once, and I found it really interesting. And I think this is what we actually need to do with cheese. We need to take activation territories, in new activation territories. Like, you know, let's take cheese to new conversations. Like, let's take it to new territories so it can actually get closer to more and more people. That's I guess that's the final aim, you know.
Nice. That's an interesting thought. I think
maybe we can take maybe we can take one last question
sure.
that I saw in the chat by Nora. The question was, who are your customers? Maybe we can just answer that briefly and then move over to the second part.
Who are your customers? My customers are, you know, I would say that for sure in the physical store, in our store in Madrid, is people from the neighborhood, but the neighborhood is quite centric. So I would say, you know, so it's not like a small neighborhood, but also, well, you know, just normal people that wants to have good cheese at home. I guess that the age profile is quite wide as well, from 30, even less sometimes, but, you know, 30, 40, 50. It's quite actually, there are quite different profiles of public, of customers. But I guess that locals are definitely a big part of it, because cheese is something that you try to buy as close as possible from home, I guess. And then in the digital platform, same thing, but all over Spain, I guess, right? People that has an interest on, you know, food, proper food, cheese, new ways of actually consuming. That's more or less what I can say about it. I think we all share it in this cheese world, I guess. The kind of customer is kind of the same all over.
All right. Thank you so much then. I think, that was super interesting. Thank you for your time.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes.
Really happy. I hope we can get in touch.
Yeah, I'm happy to, we're happy to stay in touch, definitely. It was great to connect. Great. And I see some hand clapping and a heart.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're really welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Karina, also for the great moderation.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.